Hello class, we're going to talk about lesson 6.4 today, circles. Our objectives today are we can find the area and the circumference of circles. Vocabulary alert. Our first vocab word of the day is circle, which is a set of points in a plane that are a fixed distance from a given point, which we call the center. We also have the radius, which connects the center to any point on the circle, the diameter, which connects 2 points on the circle and passes through the center, and the circumference, which is the distance around the circle. So the radius, it is just what we get when we go from the center out to some point on the circle, and our diameter is just 2 points that are connected from the circle that go through the center. So the diameter is actually 2 times our radius. Our circumference is just the distance around the circle, which you can kind of think as the perimeter of the circle. So the circumference, or C of a circle, is pi times the diameter, d, or 2 pi times the radius. So if we're given a diameter of 6, the circumference is just pi times 6. If we're given a radius of 3, it's 2 pi times 6, which we can estimate or approximate to be 18.8 units. The formulas for circumference are C equals pi times the diameter, if we're given the diameter, or C is equal to 2 times pi times the radius if we're given the radius. Let's look at our first example, finding the circumference of a circle. We need to find the circumference of a circle with the radius 5 centimeters, both in terms of pi and to the nearest tenth. We're going to use 3.14 for pi. Now, just a reminder, the circumference has 2 different formulas. We can have C, the circumference, is equal to pi times the diameter, or the circumference is equal to 2 times pi times the radius. So were we given the radius or were we given the diameter? Well, with a circle with radius 5 centimeters, we were given the radius, so we're going to use the second formula. C is equal to 2 times pi times r. So if we're going to write this in terms of pi, we're going to go, the circumference is equal to 2 times pi times 5. We can use the commutative property to switch pi and 5 to have 2 times 5 times pi, which we can then use multiplication. Have 10 pi centimeters. That is leaving it in terms of pi. Now we're going to approximate this by going 10 times 3.14 for pi, which is going to give us 31, or about 31.4 centimeters. So we have 2 answers, 31.4 centimeters and 10 pi centimeters. Let's try that one more time. Alright, we're going to do that again with a circle with a diameter of 1.5 inches. We were given the diameter, so we're going to use the first equation. The circumference is equal to pi times d. So we have C equals pi times 1.5. Now we can use the commutative property to have 1.5 times pi inches as our circumference in terms of pi. Now we also need to estimate it to the nearest tenth using 3.14 for pi. So we're going to go 1.5 3.5 times 3.14. So over here on the side, let's do some work. We have 3.14 times 1.5. 5 times 4 is 20. We can carry the 2. 5 times 1 is 5. Plus 2 is 7. 5 times 3 is 15. We'll write a 0. 1 times 4 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. And 1 times 3 is 3. Add these two numbers. 0, 11, carry the 1, 7, 4. 4, 7, 1, 0. We had 1, 2, 3 numbers that followed the decimal, so we will have 1, 2, 3 numbers to follow our decimal in our answer, which means that we can approximate to the nearest tenth that the circumference is 4.7 inches. We have two answers, one in terms of pi and one estimated to the nearest tenth. We are done with our first example. Let's move on. We also need to know how to find the area of a circle. So the area, A, of a circle is pi times the square of the radius. So if we are given a radius of a circle as 3, the area will be pi times 3 to the second power. And 3 to the second power is 9, so the area will be 9 pi. We can estimate that to be 28.3 units squared. The formula for area of a circle is area is equal to pi r squared, or pi times the radius squared. So let's look at an example. So we're going to find the area in terms of pi and to the nearest tenth using 3.14 for pi for a circle with the radius 5 centimeters. So just remember that the area's formula is A equals pi times the radius squared. We were given the radius, so we can easily just plug 5 in for r. The area is going to equal pi times 5 to the second power, which would be 25 pi centimeters squared if we leave this in terms of pi. Now we also need to estimate it or approximate it to the nearest tenth using 3.14 for pi. So we're going to have 25 times 3.14. Let's use this little space for some work. 3.14 times 25. 5 times 4 is 20. Carry the 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. 5 times 3 is 15. Write a 0. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 3 is 6. We can add these two numbers now. 0, 15, carry the 1, 8, and 7. We had 1, 2 numbers follow a decimal, so we need 1, 2 numbers to follow our decimal. So to the nearest tenth, the area is 78.5 centimeters squared. We've found the area in terms of pi and to the nearest tenth, so let's try that one more time. So we're given a circle and its diameter is 1.5 inches, but we don't have a formula for finding the area of a circle given the diameter. But we did learn earlier that the diameter is equal to 2 times the radius, which means that we can divide by 2, and our radius is equal to the diameter divided by 2. So we can take the 1.5 inches for the diameter and divide it by 2 to find our radius. So 1.5 divided by 2 is 0.75. So our radius is 0.75. So let's plug that into our formula. A is going to equal pi times 0.75 to the second power. Let's make some space so we can do some work on the side. Okay, so 0.75 times 0.75. 5 times 5 is 25. Carry the 2. 5 times 7 is 35 plus 2 is 37. Write a 0. 7 times 5 is 35. Carry the 3. 7 times 7 is 49. Plus 3 is 52. We can now add these. 5, 12, carry the 1, 6, 5. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers follow a decimal, which means we need 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers to follow a decimal in our answer. So the area is going to be 0.5625 pi inches squared. If we are looking at this in terms of pi, now we need to estimate it. So let's do that in our little workbox. So we're going to have 0.5625 times 3.14. 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2. 4 times 2 is 8. Plus 2 is 10. Carry the 1. 4 times 6 is 24. Plus 1 is 25. Carry the 2. 4 times 5 is 20. Plus 2 is 22. Write down a 0. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2. 6. And 5. Write down 2 zeros. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. 3 times 6 is 18. Carry the 1. 3 times 5 is 15. Plus 1 is 16. We have a 0, a 5, 12, carry the 1, 16, carry the 1, 16, carry the 1, 7, and 1. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers follow the decimal. So we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers to follow our decimal. So the area to the nearest tenth will be 1.8 inches squared. Alright, let's move on to our last example, our transportation application. Alright, so a bicycle odometer recorded 147 revolutions of a wheel with the diameter 4/3 feet. How far did the bicycle travel? And we're going to use 22/7 for pi. Well, we need to know how far around that bicycle wheel is. So we need to know the circumference. We have two circumference formulas. C can either be pi times the diameter, or C can be 2 times pi times the radius. We were given the diameter, so we're going to use the first formula. c is equal to pi times the diameter. So let's plug everything we know into the equation. We know that c is going to equal pi times 4/3, our diameter. But we also know that we can use the fraction 22/7 for pi. So c is equal to 22/7 times 4/3. And what we know about fractions is we can multiply the numerators, 22 times 4, and then we can multiply the denominators, 7 times 3. 22 times 4 is 88. 7 times 3 is 21. So we know that the circumference is 88/21. That's how far we would get if the wheel went around one time. But we know that the wheel went around 147 times. So we're going to take our 88/21 and multiply it by 147. Now we can write 147 as 147/1. Now let's do some multiplication. 88 times 147. So that's 12,936 divided by 21. Which is going to give us 616 feet. So that means the bicycle traveled 616 feet. Alright, so for the rest of your homework tonight, I would like you to complete the Your Turn problems in your guided notes. See you later.